Hello, I'm Mussel, Director of Operations and Strategy for Harbour Results. Today, I'm a guest of Makino, and I'm going to share with you the secret sauce for top performers. Our organization visits hundreds of manufacturers in North America, including dozens of tool and die shops every year. And with that and the benchmarking that we perform for various industry associations, we've been able to identify 10 key behaviors and approaches to business that top performers perform that you too can do in your organization. Before we start with the specific 10 steps, let's talk about this matrix that we've developed in our years of experience that identifies different positions along a performance and attitude axis that can gauge your organization. In the bottom right are those that have great performance, but a poor attitude in terms of challenging the status quo or wanting to advance their business. They have good performance, but they're complacent and in many cases believe they have it figured out. In our opinion, that's not sustainable. Often, companies then fall as performance reduces into the section where they're financially troubled, and again, their attitude isn't identifying what they need to do to get better, what behaviors and opportunities they have to advance their business, and are unsure what to do to improve overall performance. Those that can migrate up and move into the attitude where they're looking and challenging what they're doing and trying to identify better methods and approaches to their business are those that are willing to advance through this spectrum. And at the top right, you have the top performers. Those have the edgy leadership that are always looking for opportunities to advance their business and have both great performance and the continued attitude to advance and improve their overall operations. The question today, as we go through this presentation, is to try to identify where you are in this matrix and then take the opportunity to see the 10 different activities that the top performers do and see where you can implement those within your organization. So let's define what a top performer is. First of all, their profitability, their EBIT, on average is 10.4%. Their efficiency, which is a measure of throughput, value add per full-time equivalent, is 143,000. They're reinvesting in their business at a rate of 4.6% of revenue into CapEx spend. Automation, 64% have identified that they've purchased and or are planning to purchase in the next 3 years automation that's improving their operation. Their backlog, on average, is 5.4 months. And the utilization of their assets is 85%. Before we get into those 10 specific areas, the secret sauce as we like to call them, we're going to start with what leadership responsibility is in this overall presentation. This is a leadership accountability ladder. Everybody has a default that within the time that they're facing a challenge or an obstacle in their advancement of their business, they fall into one of these steps. At the very bottom, or where people are blaming others and they're making excuses. At the very top, it's those that take accountability, take ownership, and try to find solutions and make it happen. For leaders, it has to start and always default to those top sections. We cannot allow or accept behaviors where leadership and then the rest of the organization chooses to blame others, wait and hope, or just admit that they can't try to address the obstacles that face our business. Our assessment process, where we visit a client and identify within 9 different business functions within their organization, opportunities for improvement and recommendations for future path of growth, we identify that the top scores in management have 62% and are reflective of those behaviors at the top of the accountability ladder. Those with the bottom scores in our assessment, which average 48%, often default in terms of the wait and hope or I can't. They're accepting that the outside world is affecting their business in negative manners and are refusing to address those and take control of what they can. Optimize their operations and their business performance with all the variables that are in their control and stop allowing the outside world to give them negative impacts and negative influence in their decision making. So the top 10 ways, let's start. First is, are you getting your physical annually? Everybody from a health perspective are supposed to see their doctor on an annual basis. You want to be honest with that doctor. You want to get your lab tests. And then based on those results and that conversation you have with your trusted doctor, identify if there's areas for your own individual health improvement. Now, we all know that when we go into the doctor, sometimes we're not 100% truthful. We may not admit all those drinks that we're having. We may not admit those days that we're skipping exercise. And we may not want to admit that some of the results of our lab work are because of choices we're making in our diet that isn't performing or aiding into our optimal health. This is the same way for businesses. In many cases, those individuals and those firms that were in the bottom right may be performing well, and because they think they have it figured out, no longer need others to analyze or assess their business. The top performers, which have that better attitude and are in the top right, are willing to have vendors, to have other associates of their network, have organizations like ourselves visit and give input in terms of their operations. They're always searching for what is the next step, the next opportunity to advance their business. They're collectively looking at operations, strategy, the sales process, obviously the financials, which is your ultimate scorecard, and more importantly, they're building a culture that says, I know I'm doing well, but what do others see? Where are cracks in the armor that we can identify to continue to advance our business? Top performers are willing to bring you behind the curtain, to show some of the cracks in the armor, to get an honest opinion from an outside source of where there are opportunities to improve. Where are the areas that with their blinders, because they see it day in, day out, they're unable to analyze honestly and really identify those best practices and best ways to migrate their business and transform it into a greater operation. So be open to your vendors. Bring in the experts, bring in outside set of eyes. Maybe it's a friend or a colleague. Let them see your business and trust that what they're presenting to you is valuable and that you're going to take action upon it. And do that often. Don't do that once and then sit back on your laurels. Look at it on an annual or semi-annual basis. The top performers are doing it at least annually, and in many cases multiple times throughout the year from different perspectives to get the most rounded approach and feedback that they can from those that they trust. Second way is obviously finding out what your data is telling you. For us, as a data-based organization, the first things we do when we jump into an assessment is to look at your data, not just your financial performance, but information related to profitability by part, profitability by customer, operational efficiency by machine, digging into those key aspects where you can focus and truly identify those variables that are going to have the greatest influence in your business. On the operation side, are we looking at throughput? Are we looking at machine uptime? And most importantly, expected to actual hours on each job or each operation within one of our builds? A challenge that many of us will default to is that we don't have the data. It's not at our fingertips. It's surely in your ERP system if you're using an advanced ERP. And the challenge is how do you get it out and in a representative manner where decisions can be made? For sales, very similarly. If you're using a CRM or some type of sales tracking mechanism, are you identifying why you won quotes? You may be looking at hit rate, but what is the reasons for those hits and losses? Are you identifying based on customer and based on type of tool that you're manufacturing, which ones you have the best hit rate in and which ones you're more on the outside or on the margins of winning that type of work? And then obviously backlog management. Many of us are looking to identify how busy we are in the next 2, 3, 4 months. But how level loaded is it? And more importantly, when you do have a shortage of work, what are you doing to change the behaviors to try to land the best work? From a labor standpoint, we probably have very generic active metrics like safety and turnover. But are we taking it to the next level and looking at engagement, cross-training, versatility of our labor force to be able to address business environment changes that allow us to bring the best opportunities to our employees in terms of career advancement, as well as our operations to have the flexibility to adjust to changing business conditions. And most importantly on technology. Are we tracking our CapEx? Are we tracking the throughput that we have per job to understand where we're providing the most value add? And in terms of education and proficiency, are we training and are we developing our teams appropriately so that we aren't stuck with tribal knowledge in a select few individuals that know how to use the advanced equipment? We need to make sure that we're bringing technology from the top level all the way to the entry level as much as possible to aid in that career pathing that we talked about in labor. So overall, top performers are looking at data across a spectrum of inputs, not just focus on operations. They're developing metrics that truly change behaviors and influence business. Not for the sake of did we hit it or did we miss, but what do we need to do if we are missing it consistently? Or if we're making it consistently, how do we change that metric to continue to push the boundaries and transform our business? Top performers are always using data to base their decisions and to identify the areas for best improvement. The next way is to go see and go act. This is very critical and starts at the leadership level. What we're expressing here and what the top performers do on a day in, day out basis is they are in the business. They are identifying by being on the floor and working with their teams where the pain points are within their operations. One is to assess your business individually on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. Are you winning or losing the ball game? Use the metrics, use the performance of the floor and your monthly financial objectives and performance to identify where is your business. Are you hitting your strategic objectives? Are you hitting your goals for the quarter, for the month? Be able to be present on the floor and share that information with your key employees so that they know the status of the game. From there, they have the best opportunity to make changes, to make those adjustments that are going to really transform your business. Walking the floor seems very simple, but it's very important and actionable. You want to be present, you want to show that your team has access to leadership, but more importantly, what you see as a leader is something that the employees on the floor may be ignoring. They may take it for granted. They may accept that's the way it has to be. Well, you as a leader can take ownership and say it doesn't have to be that way. Show them the optimal conditions and then get the team to work to figure out how to develop that condition. Talk to your employees. Get an understanding of what's affecting them within the four walls of your business and outside of the four walls of your business. Understand the challenges that they have and the tools that they're lacking to be able to perform in their optimal condition. Also, talk to customers. You obviously want to understand market conditions and the challenges that they're facing to know what your future backlog may look like. But what are the market dynamics that they're being challenged with that you can aid, you can support, you can provide value add, and know where the direction of your business might need to be in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. If you're not doing these actions, if you're not going and seeing and going and acting, you're all relying on instinct and past experience to set the direction of your business. Top performers are not doing that. They're using the information they can glean from being present and in the moment to set short-term, mid-term, and long-term actionable plans. Next is to stop going dumpster diving. This may seem harsh, but many of your competitors, when they have a shortage of work, are going to find whatever they can to fill their machines. That's dumpster diving. They're not being selective. They're not valuing the filters that they have in their sales process to identify and only focus and accept the best work that they can. We see, based on our benchmarking, that those companies that quote 280% or even higher as a percentage of their annual revenue are out there shotgunning the market. Their hit rate is obviously lower in terms of dollars, but it's not just the value of the dollars, it's the quality of the work. They're getting the bottom quality because they're out there searching for everything. Those who have above average profitability have a more select funnel. They're not quoting on as much business. They're winning more as a percentage of that, but they're winning the business they want. They're being selective because they've identified the best filters of their condition to quote, and they're selecting just those pieces of work. It is a challenge. It is no doubt not an easy switch to go from one to the other, but it's something that top performers are focusing on, are setting objectives, and they're measuring their performance too to continue to identify the best work and to prevent themselves from going dumpster diving. The next piece really takes a leadership role to identify that bigger isn't always better. What do we want our business to look like in 5 years? Many of us start with a vision of growth. What is the size that we want to be? What is the revenue that we need to be? But we need to understand that growth has pain points. And just getting larger for the sake of getting larger doesn't necessarily mean the business overall is getting better. Top performers are looking at profitability above revenue. They want to make sure that the dollars they're bringing in are generating the bottom line performance that they expect. Profitability from a top performer at 10.4% on average versus the rest of the industry at 3.6% is indicative of an outcome of these items that we're presenting. Part of their way to drive that profitability is a focus on cash conversion and their payment terms. As we can see from 2020 into 2021 and into Q2 2022, we're seeing an erosion in cash conversion and more businesses going to progressive payment terms. That is adding risk into the business. And as you grow, that's going to add much more capital and working capital risk to your overall operation, challenging the ability for you to invest, challenging the ability for you to grow and hire because your cash is locked up in projects that you've added for the sake of growth. Also, AR. We are seeing a slight increase and worsening throughout the year of 2022 in terms of on-time payments. So that cash conversion cycle is getting stretched. Top performers are very focused on making sure that they're converting their working capital into profitable work and then choosing to grow at a scalable and meaningful approach, not trying to transform too much too quickly and then stretching themselves and adding risk into their business. The next step is flexibility. And this is a generic term for all of manufacturing, but a very key activity in terms of being present and understanding that your business cannot be one size fits all. You need to have flexibility or agility built in so that you can capitalize on opportunities and make sure to flex when challenges are faced in terms of market conditions or overall economic challenges. Those businesses below the attitude line feel they have one business system, one performance that they expect, and as long as business fits in that window, they're going to continue to do well. Well, the challenge is there's a variety of economic conditions that we faced with COVID in 2020, with the supply chain challenges in 2021, material costs, and the variety of commodity price changes that we see from peak to trough overall. Your business needs to be able to be successful in multiple business conditions, not just one stagnant level. Those who have flexibility have a tremendous amount of efficiency with their full-time equivalents via the efficiency metric of 143,000, and they can change. If there's work in certain departments but not overall, how do you transfer labor to make it as efficient as possible? How do you flex up and use overtime efficiently when you're busy without adding excess indirect and direct labor and or overhead into your business, that when things get tighter and the business leans out, you're burdened with those costs? A rigid mindset is truly one of the failures of businesses when they think about the attitude axis. Those who are very rigid and are focused on one business environment are unable to project and are unable to be prepared for changes in economic conditions. Run perfect every time. That sounds simple, but is obviously much more complicated than that. The idea here is that every operation in your organization is running to expectation, is running to standard. When you have many good decisions compounding on each other and all those events are going to plan, that's when profitability comes to light. Every time you have an operation or a step that is substandard, you're losing money, you're leaving money on the table. And when those combine into 10, 20, 30, multiple substandard operations in one project, all of that time erosion, all of that cost erosion is going to turn your project upside down. So we like to project as this 3-panel. It's an activity that can't be done just one time, but has to be done for every project. Multiple steps along the way to ensure that what you're doing today is equal to what you quoted. So your first panel is the quote. It's the baseline. It's the setting of that expectation. It's very important to have those who are going to own the later steps take accountability in setting that quote so that they understand what's realistic. You then have your try out and build phase. Are those operational steps happening in accordance to plan, at the rate, at the time, and in the right sequencing that was projected at the quote level? And then at the back end, lessons learned. After that operation or after the project, are we going back and identifying where we had our holes in the bucket? What do we need to do differently? Is it the way that we quote? Is it the way that we schedule? Is it the way that we use the asset? Is it a piece of equipment that if we had, we could gain efficiency? All of those type activities can be then used on this third panel to identify where those holes in the buckets lie and what the next steps are to improve. Those that don't do it per project and are only doing it once per year, or maybe only when there's that one sore thumb project, lack the resilience to be able to look at lessons learned on each opportunity and only want to identify it when there's that big issue. And at that point, there's probably multiple small issues that are simmering under the surface that you're missing because you're only looking at that big dollar loss. The key with the lessons learned and the continuous improvement is to identify all those that are just below the surface and make incremental improvements so that each future project clears up and fills those holes in the bucket. Some of the data analysis that we like to promote to be able to do this 3-panel activity is to Pareto those downtimes and understand within each project, where are you finding the biggest issues or the biggest challenges in terms of sequencing and pacing of your projects through your firm. Problem solve each individually. Don't look at it holistically and try to find one smoking gun. It's likely not that easy. But by project, by tool, by process, where is the most erosion from our profitability happening? And don't just stop at the operation side. but what are we doing from a quoting, from a sales expectation, from a financial billing and monitoring aspect to lack the clarity that we want to be able to identify those opportunities for continuous improvement. And again, don't stop. Do it on every project, on every tool. Sometimes even in between. Don't wait till the end to find out where the score of the game is. What can you do intermittently to advance this overall? One common approach is to take your top 10 winners and your top 10 losers and figure out what the differences were between those projects. Was it the customer? Was it the expectations that were set in the beginning? Was it the equipment that was used to produce those projects? There's something in that data that's going to tell you the difference between winning and losing and where you can find your opportunities to run this 3-panel and drive the best benefit back into the organization in terms of lessons learned. Next is the cliche that no one wants to work anymore. The top performers are solving this problem because they're not just sitting back and saying the labor market doesn't exist. They're being creative. They're finding ways to add the appropriate labor, and they're doing so at the cost of those who are unwilling to change. One of the first in the description that we have here via the pictures is, what does the environment look like that you're bringing your employees into? In a tight labor market where people are no longer desperate to be employed, they have selections. They have different opportunities. How are you appealing to them? Do you look like the top firm where there's dirt on the floor, very messy operation, not very well lit? Or are you more like the bottom? Well lit, very organized, clean, it looks high tech. It has an appeal that as an employee, I want to be in here. The top side, you're just expecting labor to show up. The bottom, they're actually recruiting and trying to bring in the talent that they want. Obviously, there's generational differences. We need to identify and acknowledge that they exist and how to work with each generation differently. Everybody wants to be valued and everybody wants to be heard. Back to the earlier stages where we talked about being to go act and go see, being on your plant floor is critical to be able to have that opportunity to connect with an employee, to show that they're valued, and to hear some of the challenges that they're having. Quiet quitting was a cliche in the last 12 months where people were giving up. They wanted to find something that was more rewarding, but they were unwilling to be assertive and make that change on their own. Well, the top performers are preventing that because they're gauging engagement on an overall annual basis, quarterly basis. They're doing town halls. They're trying to generate that type of engagement to prevent people from falling into that mental trap. Obviously, there's lots of new competition. Amazon warehouses are out there. They're being built faster than anything else. There's challenges in terms of labor wage growth. All of these we need to accept as real impacts to our business that we have to adjust for. And then obviously, lastly, what motivates each person? What motivates you as a business leader is going to be different than what motivates somebody who's working on an off shift or somebody who's just starting their career. Everybody's got different things and different switches that are going to make them committed and highly valuable employees. Leaders have to identify what those are and understand that it's not about employees being desperate for work to fill our ranks, but it's about us valuing them and developing career paths and opportunities for them to transform within our business as we lead the overall transformation of our business. Number 9, show me the technology. This is really where that top performer value of CapEx spend of 4.8% is really important, because those top performers are identifying on an annual basis what technology is going to advance their business, committing the capital behind it, and most importantly, committing the human capital in terms of training and development to get the best use out of that technology. Automation is not just a piece of robotics that goes on a machining center. Automation takes multiple different aspects, from human capital in terms of your method of training. What can HR do to advance and automate some of those steps that they do for onboarding, do for safety checks, and the activity related to employee engagement surveys. On the quality side, there's a variety of automation opportunities, many that are in use today in your organizations. But what can we do for automated inspection, closed loop SPC, to advance the capabilities and the quality performance of our organization without adding bodies to perform those inspections? On the processing side, we obviously have a scheduling software. What technology is out there to improve that aspect of our business and drive efficiency just through how we manage the process, starting from quote through execution of that tool build? costing and quoting. There's advanced technologies out there to make that process much quicker and less human dependent. You're able to turn more accurate, and more flexible quotes to your customers and being able to adjust to their changing timelines in a better way. And then obviously from a overall software aspect, what are those pieces of software that are out there for enterprise value or within even a single process that's going to make your equipment run better, that's going to be able to identify where you have gaps in your capabilities, and more importantly, where can we get BI, business intelligence software, so that leadership can see a dashboard and identify where their pain points are in the moment? And how do we then get that business intelligence information down to our employees at the floor level so that they can see the score of the game as fast as possible and help identify where we can fill those holes in the bucket? In terms of our benchmarking, it is clear that from 2019 to 2022, there's been a large focus in trying to add automation and technology, and most importantly, those top performers are driving the greatest benefit out of it. They've selected the best vendors, they've selected the equipment that they know is appropriate for their business, and then driving the most value out of it. Lastly, number 10, cash is king. Top performers are very focused on managing their cash, understanding their forecasts, and then being able to adjust when their forecasts and their budgets are not coming in line, both on the way up or on the way down. Top performers often perform rolling 3+9s or 6+6 forecasts to understand at what level the revenue expectation, the utilization of their assets, and their profitability will be based on a set of circumstances. By having this mentally and in front of your team, when changes happen, when you have a slow month or a slow quarter, you can scenario plan and identify, based on this new top level revenue, what do we need to change so that we don't wake up in 3 months and realize that we've lost or we've not performed at the level that we want. Top performers have this long-term visibility, knowing that forecasting is a challenge and not precise, but the ability to at least set an expectation so that when things, again, both up and down, affect their top line revenue, they know which levers they need to pull to protect their profitability and manage their business as best as possible. These are 10 ways to become a top performer. It starts with leadership. There has to be a commitment and a plan. These do not happen overnight. You have to set a strategy with your organization, with your teams, to be able to address some of these. Identify what's most important today and make a plan of what you're going to do in 6 months and 12 months so that you can bring these behaviors and attitudes into your organization and help push your operation from below the line of attitude to that top line of attitude. With that, performance will follow, and that's evidence from our top performers. Lastly, we want to pull all this together in terms of one optimal slide. It's about flexibility. It's about leadership at that center, understanding that they need to provide a vision for sustainable growth, sustainable business, and that starts with the outer ring of understanding the data, assessing your business, and building an analysis to identify what the next steps are. Where are the areas for opportunities and what are the actions we're going to take to improve those? And it's not just operations. Obviously, operational excellence is critical, but there's a vision, there's a strategy that has to be in place, and that includes a commercial strategy and a sales approach. That technology roadmap, what do we want our business to look like in 3 to 5 years from a technology activity? Because it can't happen overnight. We need to generate some of that cash to be able to invest in our business. And then the talent strategy. Who and what type of individual do we want to bring in our organization that's going to make the greatest impact? We're not just paying for skill. Often we want to pay for attitude and develop that skill internally. So what can we do to build together a holistic plan, build the career paths into our business and into our recruiting efforts to round out our overall flexibility strategy? Your customers are going to appreciate this. Obviously, they're focused on price, but they can identify, because of the different vendors that they're going into, who is taking this and honestly trying to assess their business and drive long-term improvement, and who are sitting back and believe they have it figured out and are just expecting growth and opportunity to be provided to them. It's key to continue to embrace technology, understand your marketplace, because then you can be opportunistic. And that is ideally where the greatest profitability comes from, because you've built that foundation to drive that profitability. And now I'd like to take the opportunity within the chat to ask the questions based on our presentation that just concluded and have an opportunity as a guest of Makino to be able to provide value to you.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Gene. Excellent presentation. Lots to consider, lots to think about here. We do have a couple of questions that have come in from our audience that everybody may see up on their screen, but I'll read them off to you in case you aren't on that page. How does a leader increase their time being visible on the production floor? Go see, go act without appearing to micromanage.
Absolutely. So that's a challenge because, if you're on the floor all the time and you're pointing out the failures of the business, you're going to suffocate the business and suffocate your employees, and they're just going to react to what you're pointing out instead of coming up with their own ideas. So the key is to be collaborative, is to frame the issue in terms of, what do you see here? Do you think this is the best we can do? What would you need to your employees to make this better? And have them start generating some ideas, present tools or data that they would like to see to improve. And then as the leader, deliver that. Be the one that can deliver those resources, help implement it. Really, it's about setting the vision. It's not about telling them how to do it. I think you went on mute.
Oh, thank you. Next one that came in is, we have access to lots of data, maybe too much. What do you recommend is the best data to focus on for improvement?
I wish there was a smoking gun that would be the solution for everybody. But often, my way to phrase that is, what matters most in your business? Is there already something that at a certain level, either labor utilization or maybe machine utilization, that when you hit certain levels, good things happen. Profitability falls to the bottom line. And trying to identify those key variables that have the most influence is the data that you want. And often we have so much and it can be overwhelming, and some of it not telling us the story that we really need. So what I would recommend is to pick pieces, have team members look at it and say, what do you need? What information, data point, if I gave you, would change your behavior? Would you say, that's too low, I'm going to go do something differently? Just reporting the news isn't going to make a difference to your business. You need something that truly has influence.
Okay. Thank you. There's one last question that we have is, how do we promote flexibility in our organization when, as mold makers, we tend to have very established standards?
Yes. So I'm an operations guy. I'll be the first one to admit that when I say flexibility, I don't mean go out there and change the way you're doing it and allow everybody to have their own opinion on how a process is done. That's not the case. You still have to have your standards, and you have to have your repeatable and dependable processes. The question is, when business conditions change and the market needs more of this type of asset to be developed versus something that you're more familiar with, are you prepared for that? So the flexibility is often not just reacting, but it's being prescriptive. Can you look ahead and understand that if we need to pivot our business, and I'm using that word broadly, so pivot sales strategy, pivot talent strategy, pivot operations, because the direction of the economy is going differently. What is that plan? Can you create a plan B, a plan C, so that you're aware of it? And then when a leader says, hey, we need to make this pivot, you already have something somewhat established that you want to pursue. But again, to repeat, flexibility does not mean go out there and try everything and allow people to be mavericks out on your plant floor. That is not what Gene Mussel is telling you today.
Okay, that's great. I think that's all the questions that we have right now. I'd like to thank you on behalf of Makino. We appreciate the wonderful presentation and information here. Lots to think about. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's Experience Center event. If you have questions or would like to have a one-on-one Experience Center discussion with any of our industry experts, please reach out to your Makino sales representative, and we'd be happy to schedule something for you. So thanks, everybody, for the time. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.